Good evening, folks, and welcome back to another episode of NASCAR Backmarker Battles. I'm your host of the ARCA Racing Podcast, Colby Evans, aka Starting Park Car on Twitter. We have a big show for you guys today, our review of the big badass Talladega Superspeedway and our preview show for the what is going to be a wet weekend in Dover Motor Speedway. We're going to go through our little intro that we go through at the beginning of every show, and we'll get right into the racing action, so just stick with me for the next minute. You guys know the drill. Follow me on social media at Starting Park Car on Twitter. We're very close to 5,000 followers, less than 500 away. So let's get to that goal by the end of the year. Like and subscribe to the channel. Turn on that bell for all notifications so you guys never miss a podcast because we go live quite a bit on this channel. And of course, give a shout out to the racingexperts.com for all NASCAR media content. They help this channel a lot. Whew, man, I love that intro. So let's get right into it, guys. NASCAR, the backmarker battles at Talladega, the opportunity race. The one race, one of the few tracks on the NASCAR schedule that a backmarker can not only win, but can guarantee a great finish. And we definitely saw that this weekend. Some backmarkers had some great runs at Talladega, while some backmarkers had some horrible runs at Talladega. Same goes for the Cup Series as well. Lots of changes in the owner point standings. First, we'll review Tyler in the chat because of your personal. Well, I mean, I've been having some personal issues, but okay. Yeah, we are back after a couple of weeks off, guys. I've been having some deep personal issues, but I wanted to come on for you guys tonight. All right. Yeah, the 2023 AG Pro 300, we had 42 cars entered for this race. Big field, one of the largest since Daytona. And, you know, one of my biggest problems I've had with superspeedway qualifying, again, we all know it's all about the car. We know it's all about the car. We know it's all about what under that hood. And in some ways, I don't like that. I don't like the fact that these teams are pretty much now forced to spend all this money on leased motors. You know, we've seen a lot of these teams will have to spend these big high dollars on these leased motors just to make the show. When we saw in qualifying, such as we'll talk about these certain cars for a quick second, that you don't necessarily need a leased motor to be competitive at a track like this. You don't. Does it help? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, you'll be just fine with the motor that you would run in general. Now, obviously, there were certain cars that you could tell were running leased motors, and then there were cars that you could tell were not. No practice, of course. I still don't like that. I know the teams asked for it, but I really wish NASCAR could do kind of like what ARCA does, you know, groups, little warm-up sessions just to make sure the car is right, just to make sure the weights are right, oil temps, everything's all hooked up correctly, because sometimes just sending your car out there to qualifying is not always the best idea. As we looked into qualifying for this race, important to note, CHK, Mike Harmon did put a statement on the CHK Facebook account stating that when he was going through the gears, he actually shifted down on his qualifying lap. That's why his run was as slow as it was, because it caused him basically, go down a gear, you have to go back up, and it basically just killed his acceleration speed. And unfortunately, there's no do-overs. So Harmon pretty much knew that he was not going to make the show before he even got off of turn 2 on his warm-up lap. So that is the reason why the 75 was so slow, because I did expect them to have a better lap than they did. But unfortunately, Harmon had trouble getting up through the gears. And it happens. It happens. So don't bear mind on the 74. It does suck because they kind of were running a throwback paint scheme for this race, the similar paint scheme to what Harmon was running in his Busch days in the early 2000s. So to an extent, it does suck to see that they didn't have a legit chance to see what kind of speed they had. And maybe, again, one reason right there is why I would like to practice. Some other teams, though, that you could tell were not running leased motors. Teams like the 45 of Ryan Ellis, they openly said they weren't. The 6 of Brennan Poole apparently said they were not, according to their crew chiefs. The cars that did have to make the show on time that absolutely had no owner points coming into this race, the 13 of Jason White, the only other attempt for the 13 was Daytona, and that was a DNQ. The 34 of Jesse Iwuji, They had only attempted Daytona and had a dismal finish there. Other than that, pretty much everyone else had some sort of owner points on the board. And qualifying went about the way you would expect. Cars got faster throughout the run. The surprises throughout qualifying were Jade Buford, but at the same time, it also wasn't shocking considering, while yes, it's a part-time car, it is basically an RCR affiliate entry with Big Machine Racing. Anthony Alfredo, you got to know that they're going to get a big motor for this race. So not shocking to see the 5 and the 78 up there, as you know that they got a special motor for these races. Other surprises in the field, Dexter Stacy and MBM Motorsports, after just barely missing Daytona, they were able to make this race, qualifying a very, very impressive 22nd. I know they had a Hendrick power plant under the hood, so that's why they were not a pick to DNQ by me. When you have a Hendrick power plant under the hood, you should have more than enough speed to make the race, which they clearly did. Unfortunately, the same could not be said for the MBM teammate. The 13 of Jason White, which had the Buffalo Wild Wings sponsorship, he missed it by just 2 cars. He was 35th on time trials, needed to be top 33. So he missed the race. Jesse Awuji, I like Jesse, but, he doesn't do anything in these play races. He just rides around in the back and collects whatever finish he can get. So it wasn't a big deal that he missed the show. Tough deal for David Starr. That 07 car, man, you talk about a car that has really struggled this year, the SS Greenlight 07 car. And it makes me wonder, are they going to run this car full time? Is SS Greenlight Racing going to continue to run the 07 full time when realistically they have no sponsorship for the car and Stefan Parsons has just kind of become the default driver? They ran with no sponsorship at Richmond. They ran the exact same car the next weekend at Martinsville with Dawson Cram driving with a little bit of sponsorship from B Water. And, of course, we know David Starr's got sponsorship dollars, but then, of course, they failed to qualify at Talladega. So you just mix all these bad runs and now a DNQ. It makes you wonder what the 07 team is going to do forward. They are entered for Dover, but it's got to suck. And it is surprising to see how far down SS Greenlight Racing has fallen in the last couple years. Just noticeable based off of their speed. So the 4 DNQs for this race were Jason White, Jesse Wuji, David Starr, and Mike Harmon. I would say realistically, and I love Mike Harmon, but really Jason White, I'd say, was the biggest loser out of all of those DNQs. Jesse probably wouldn't have done much in the race. David probably would have ran mid-pack at best. And Harmon, kind of the same as Jesse, probably just would have ran towards the rear of the field because those guys don't really want to tear up their stuff, whereas the 13 would have been right in the thick of things because Jay White was actually a pretty decent plate racer in his truck series days. Austin Hill was on the pole. Of course, you had to know that the Chevrolet teams were more than likely going to win the pole again. They won it last year with Jeffrey Earnhardt. The race itself, and then we get to the race itself. Oh, boy. Not many cars finished this race. In total, 19 cars ended up finishing this race. Actually, more than I thought. So half the field still ended up finishing. The race was very calm in the beginning. It took about 40 laps for all, how they say is all hell to break loose. Our first caution came on lap 40. No real backmarkers taken out. I mean, if you consider the 78 a backmarker team, I don't anymore because they've shown amazing speed. But the 78, the 24, the 10, and the 31 were all involved in a crash. That eliminated the 78. It was the next caution on lap 49 that really concerned a lot of people. Dexter Stacy. Unfortunately, Dexter Stacy kind of did a move at Talladega that we have seen multiple times, unfortunately. Somebody coming off of the turn at Talladega washes up off the corner and then just overcorrects it. We've seen that done multiple times over the years by various drivers, even drivers way more experienced than Dexter. So I don't blame Dexter for the crash. Dale Jr. has done the exact same move where you just overcorrect too much off a corner and you wreck yourself. We've seen it done 1,000 times. It's an easy mistake to make at Talladega, especially with all that air and all those cars around you. Unfortunately for Dexter, he didn't just slide down the track. He slid down the track, hit the 0-2. Unfortunately for Dexter, he hit that kick out in the wall that Talladega has. And it seems like every couple years, we see somebody just absolutely nail that kick out on the backstretch and just suffer a horrible driver's side hit. Now, thankfully, to an extent, the 66, the majority of the hit took place on the front of the car rather than the side of the car. And thankfully, it was a safer barrier as well. But a lot of the impact more took place on the left front than the actual driver's side. But still a very hard hit for them. So, and that sucked for Carl Long. I mean, that team cannot buy any luck in 2023. Outside of crashes and mediocre runs, they've just had DNQs. And it sucks because everyone knows I'm one of the biggest Carl Long fans you'll ever see. Meanwhile, Dexter's crashing, and then they cut, and then there's the 0-2 barrel rolling across the backstretch. If they're making contact with the 5, the 0-2 car went up like it was nothing. The roof flaps, I don't even know if the roof flaps deployed. I don't even think they had time to deploy. That 0-2 went up like a rocket. And I will say, though, and to some extent, the barrel rolling, hitting the rear and the front of the car, it in some ways was a good thing because it dissipated a lot of energy. The actual side and the roll cage of the car was not hitting the ground that much. So I think to an extent that was a good thing that it wasn't hitting the actual roll cage. And when you could tell, Blaine, he was okay. I mean, he got out, but he was definitely shaken up. He was shaken up, and I would think that would shake up anyone. Thankfully, went to the hospital, got checked out. Was released, is not racing this weekend. Kyle Weatherman is, spoiler alert, Kyle Weatherman is driving the 0-2, I believe, in Blaine's place. I don't think this was planned. Blaine will not be racing this weekend, but will return at Darlington. So glad Blaine's okay. And I hate it. Ollie's bargain outlet cars are always good-looking cars. So you got to hate to see the Ollie's car get destroyed. And I will say, I don't know if NASCAR is going to let this one go from the R&D Center, but if they do, hopefully we'll see this car end up in Dirty Mo Acres. This would be the perfect candidate for a car to end up in Dale Jr.'s graveyard. But some cars like this, NASCAR does not want to get rid of from the R&D Center. But at the end of the day, we've seen flips like this 100 times in the sport, so I wouldn't know what NASCAR can't really change anything. At the end of the day, these cars are going to flip sometimes. There's not really much you can change about it. We can't. I mean, if we slow them down, the racing's just going to get worse. We've seen worse than Blaine's flip, and the drivers are still okay. So I would just say it's another one of those Talladega flips. I don't know how you guys call it, but to me, it's just another Talladega flip. We don't need to really change anything. It's just it happens. It's going to happen. But glad Blaine's okay. Sucks for our motorsports. That team, like I said, we documented their financial issues throughout the offseason coming into this year. The Larry's Lemonade partnership, which essentially, I mean, we can pretty much all agree, saved the organization. And, of course, their partnership with FRS Racing. So that eliminated them and Dexter. And throughout the race, it would just felt like every 5 or 6 laps we would crash, and they would be horrible crashes. Of course, the big one that everyone's talking about, Jeffrey. Before this, though, we had Jeffrey Earnhardt. I feel for Jeffrey, man. He's a great plate racer. The 44s just had not much luck. They had a transmission issue. They tried to send him back out in just 4th gear, but it just wouldn't go. So they had to retire him. He got a disappointing finish. And then the one wreck that everyone's talking about, the big one that saw Daniel Hemrick go over, which was his fault, by the way. I mean, he turned himself. He came right down through a horrible block. Really was his fault. I don't blame anyone else but him. And that's Daniel Hemrick for you. Everyone knows I'm not the biggest Daniel Hemrick fan. But yeah, that wreck itself didn't take out many backmarkers. The ones that it really took out was the 91 of Josh Bilicki. He took just a horrible hit on the rear of the car. I'm kind of surprised there was as much damage to the rear's car as there was. And one thing we have really never seen, the back shield, the back windshield was not there. It was gone. That's how hard the 91 hit. I mean, this car was destroyed. I was kind of surprised that he was able to drive it back. So 91 Bilicki was eliminated. And even at this point, we'd only eliminated about 4 back markers. We still had quite a few of them in the field. A lot of them had managed to run at the back and not hurt themselves too bad. It was really the last lap crash that actually eliminated a lot of the back markers, even though they got good runs, tore up their cars. Some moments that did happen on this in this wreck, the 35 of Joey Gase was actually documented in a video in a pit road fire that saw the rear brakes or something on the car. Yeah, I agree. I'm kind of surprised NASCAR didn't take the 91 to the R&D center, because that was a lot of damage on the rear of the car. I'm kind of shocked NASCAR didn't want to look at that one either. But yeah, going back to the the 35. That's what I was talking about. There was a video that circulated on the EGM Instagram, Twitter, and the rear of the car, I don't know if it was the brakes, something caught fire. And I had reported that a car apparently had exploded. Something did explode. The car itself didn't explode, but something on the 35 exploded. The rear of the car erupted into flames. They quickly sprayed the fire extinguishers. And then I don't know if you saw from Ryan Pistana, who does paint work for Alpha Prime, Martin's Motorsports. You could see there was just fire chemical everywhere. So unfortunately, all the crew members, lots of crew down the pit lane was just covered in fire chemical. So I'm like, you've already had that kind of bad of a day. Imagine just being covered in fire chemical. Oh God, that would probably would have sucked. And yet somehow I thought the rule was once your car gets hit with the fire extinguisher, you're done. Nope. Joey Gase just inhaled all those toxic fumes into his helmet and just goes right back out on the track. I'm like, what? I could have swore the rule was when your car gets hit by the fire extinguisher, you're done. Nope. The fire goes out. There goes the 35 right back out on the track with the driver who had just inhaled all this toxic fumes. What are we doing here? I thought we were promoting safety. So I can't believe the 35 is back on the track. My mind was blown. The 35 is back out on the track. I'm listening to his radio. Joey's not saying a damn thing. I don't think he can probably even talk. His instinct is probably just to finish the race. And as all this is happening, all these backmarkers who survived this big one, Jeb Burton, he was just a crazy man out there. He won a stage, leading all these laps, running up front. And then the backmarkers that managed to survive the crash that were in line for great runs. You had Brennan Poole in the top 5. Cesar Baccarella in the 43 this week. He was in the top 10. Greg Galding, we know he finished second a couple years ago. He was in the top 10. Both EGM cars, despite one catching on fire, were both still out there. Josh Williams, Ryan Ellis, and the other Alpha Prime car. Kyle Sieg in the 28, kind of the lone RSS entry that was still having a good run. And the other Johnny Davis entry, the 4 of Garrett Smithley, and of course, Jeremy Clements. A lot of these backmarker cars that were still out there and in line for a good run or maybe even an upset win. So we went back green again, had a quick crash had a very quick crash. They lined them back up again. And unfortunately, you could kind of tell, though, and this is where the least motor argument can kind of come into play. The top 4 really pulled away because the cars that were in 5th and 6th, I don't think had a least motor, so they didn't accelerate as quick. And it took about half a lap for the pack to come back together. And I'll give the 27 credit, whether you like Jeb Burton or not, he raced for his life out there. He really did. And you say he was blocking like a madman. It's what you got to do to win. A team like his is not going to go out there and win. It's just not going to happen every week. They're not going to go out there every week and be able to beat Colleague, Junior, and Joe Gibbs Racing. They're just not. They're not capable of doing that. Week to week, I mean. They can do it on these tracks, but week to week, you're not going to see it. You're just not. And he went out there, and without a speck on the car, the 27 car was as clean as it could be. The 27 went out there and won at Talladega. And so congratulations to Jordan Anderson. They had that amazing video package at the beginning of the show, pre-race of his Talladega truck. God, that thing is just destroyed. I can see why he wants to keep it for memories. I wouldn't want to junk it either. And it's just grateful that Jordan Anderson is still with us. Very frightening crash. But how about that? Jordan Anderson Racing gets its first career win as a owner. Some great runs to back it up. Brennan Poole, top 5 finish, his first top 5 in years. Cesar Beccarella gets 6th. Parker Retzloff, Jeb's teammate, gets 7th. Greg Galding, 8th. The fire car, Joey Gase, gets 9th. Josh Williams gets 10th. And then the cars that crashed but still finished. Ryan Ellis with damage, 11th. We had a massive crash coming to the flag. Garrett Smithley was running top 5. Unfortunately, he got turned. He would end up 16th. The 53, the 4, the 45, despite top 20 finishes, still got pretty torn up. So while, yes, it's great they got good runs, you still go home with a torn-up car. Really, at the end of the day, it was the 35, 43, and 6 that I would say came out the best of the backmarkers. And with these great runs, it has really affected the owner standings. Obviously, this now locks in the 27 of Jordan Anderson Racing into the Owners Championship playoffs. It locks them into the top 20 bonus at the end of the year. So for Jordan Anderson, already, he is looking at another $80,000 because we know in Xfinity, you get an extra $80,000 for finishing in the top 20 in driver points and the top 20 in owner points. So right there, that is an extra $160,000 that is going to Jordan Anderson at the end of the year. And that's the way these owners look at it. And I like that. And that's good for them. I just saw this in the chat. And that is true. For all the inconsistency that NASCAR does with the move of the 92 of Josh Williams at Atlanta, the 21 of Austin Hill was literally crab walking the final 7 laps. And yet they let him finish. He brought out a caution from damage from his car and was completely unsafe, should not have been out there, but yet NASCAR lets him stay out there. Why didn't you let Josh Williams stay out there? Again, NASCAR with their inconsistency, something's got to change about that. That was not fair. And if I was Josh Williams, I would have been laughing on the radio when they said that the 21 is crab walking, but yet they're still letting him race. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up in the chat. But yeah, the Xfinity owners changes with the dismal finish. That drops the 78 of BJ McLeod Motorsports down to 20th. The great runs for the 92 lately have upgraded them to 22nd in points. The Alpha Prime cars right now, the 45 and the 43 are sitting very pretty right now inside the top 30. 25th and 26th with their top 11 finishes. And the 28 of RSS Racing has kind of been the RSS car lately that has been doing very, very well. All 3 RSS cars in the top 30. And with their top 5 finish, the 6 of JD Motorsports is now back. After being so far out, JD Motorsports finally will get the 10K extra bonus. They will have 1 car in there for Dover, and they will be tied with the Emerling Gase 35 car. And despite some very poor runs lately, the 24 Sam Hunt racing car. Now, we questioned this move at the beginning of the year. Was a team like Sam Hunt Racing ready for 2 cars? And the 24 has definitely been a struggle this year. That car right now is 32nd in points. We know that car is fine for making races. It's definitely quick enough. But you got to be careful, man. Right now, they are out of that top 30 10K bonus territory. And realistically, they are over 40 points out of the top 20. So right now, the 24 for Sam Hunt Racing, definitely not where they wanted that car to be. Other cars that are struggling, of course, CHK, still only 2 points on the board, down in 44th. MBM, down in 40th. The 07, down in 38th. They are so low in points. I mean, at this point, it's kind of like what I've been saying the last couple of episodes. The 66, the 07, and the 74, it's all about just making races at this point. Week to week to week, just making races. No worries about owner points, just making the show. Because they are so far down, no need to even look at bonuses. They are just not even close to it, unfortunately. The 4 is pretty far behind. I think they're kind of in the same boat. The 44 for Alpha Prime, you could say it's almost in the same boat as well. They are over 20 points out of the top 30 10K bonus as well. Both of the Emerling Gase cars are back outside the top 30. The 91 has been outside the top 30 almost all year. The other SS Greenlight car is barely managing to also stay in the top 30. The 02 is barely managing to stay in the top 30. So the top 30 extra 10K bonus battle is definitely going to be the battle to watch this weekend at Dover. Because right now, from 29th all the way down to 33rd is separated by just 12 positions. So that could really jumble after Dover this weekend, because we know Dover is a really real racers track and handling track, and these teams got to get that handling correct. Another team that I really did want to talk about that I do feel is kind of stagnant, although they are 23rd in owner points. I've seen some of you comment on the chat at it. And I just wonder, we talked about them before, but is Jeremy Clements' team now falling too far behind? Because we know a lot of teams are purchasing leased motors and running old motors. Jeremy Clements' team, I believe, is one of the few teams that are still building their own motors at a high level. A lot of teams that still build their own motors are just not at the level that Jeremy Clements does it. But at the end of the day, is it becoming to the point now where they are building their own motors, but are they falling too far behind? Are they, with not getting leased motors for any race, not even plate tracks, are they just falling too far behind with their power? They had 2 really good years. 2020 and 2021, I feel like, were good years. 2022 was kind of a down year for them. And I would say this year also really hasn't been the best year. Have they had some good runs? Yes, they have. But when you look at the 51 this season overall, it's nothing, I would say, out of the ordinary. I mean, 17th, 18th, 20th, 14th, 15th. It's about what they usually do. But at the end of the day, are you really making progress? And Jeremy, he's not a young guy anymore. Jeremy's, 38 years old? They've been in this business for a long time. But are we now in an era where building your own motors, we're now in an era where building your own motors, you can't be competitive on a weekly basis anymore. And I think the unfortunate part is Jeremy Clements' team is the biggest sign of that. It's not like they're running like crap. I mean, they're still top 20 caliber every week. But the progression that we had seen that team go through in the late 2010s, we're now starting to see that go away as we get into the early 2020s. I don't know if I'm the only one that's feeling that, but I feel like some of you guys in the chat have seen that. I feel like it's just noticeable. The 51 team is not where they were, and I don't know what it is, because they still have the sponsorship, plenty of sponsorship. But yeah, and then we transfer from Xfinity Talladega to Xfinity Dover real quick. Xfinity Dover, then we'll get to Cup, of course. For this race, we had 40 cars entered. Spoiler alert, it was announced today that the 77 of Carson Hocevar. Now, this is a Spire Motorsports car, but it's being built. It's being built in Junior Motorsports. It's basically just a Junior Motorsports car. So really no excuse for Carson Hocevar to run like crap. When Carson eventually does get into the 77 car, there is no excuse for him to run like crap. This is a Junior Motorsports entry, fielded under Spire Motorsports. So yeah, 40 cars, now down to 39. It looked like a complete washout for the entire weekend. Saturday is looking a little bit better. I do hope we can have an attempt to get qualifying in, because the 74 and the CHK have a great sponsorship and a great wrap paint scheme from the Troopers United Foundation. They even have a die cast being made of that car. So I hope that they can have a chance to even qualify, because that's kind of been the Achilles heel for the 74 this season. Timmy Hill, tried and true with MBM, is back with them with Wild Willie's as the sponsor. And if we have qualifying, I know Timmy will get the car in the show. We all know Timmy can get that car in the show. But I'd like to see if Dawson could get that car in the show. I think, we have some stragglers. Chad Chastain, I don't know how fast he'll be. Emmerling and both McLaughlin were pretty slow. So I think if they can have qualifying, I think the 74 has got a legit chance at making the show at Dover. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see. By the way, I think the 77, they just said that their next race will just be the next one at Darlington. So they'll just put that on hold for a week. But I will say, if we end up getting qualifying in on Saturday, 77 team's probably going to be kind of kicking themselves a little bit because we withdrew for nothing. But yeah, I hope we can get qualifying in. If, and this is if, we have qualifying on Saturday, my DNQ prediction for Xfinity, I am actually going to go with the 53 of CJ McLaughlin. I think the 74 gets in. The 66 should easily get in. Stefan Parsons is in the 07. Stefan Parsons is in the 07. He's a great qualifier, so we know he'll get in. And I think Garrett Smithley, we know Garrett Smithley and Jeffrey Earnhardt are good qualifiers as well. We know Garrett's been having some issues, but Garrett's ran Dover many, 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 many times. I think Garrett will get that car in the show. So I'm actually picking the 53 to go home on Saturday if we have qualifying. Obviously, if we don't have qualifying, if we don't have qualifying tomorrow, then the 74 goes home. But again, you never know. We all thought we weren't going to get qualifying in at Martinsville. That looked like a complete washout, and we ended up getting that. So we'll see. I hope the 74 gets a chance because, man, that would suck. All that effort to put the wrap on just to have to take it back off without even getting a chance to qualify. And like I said, the backmarker battles to watch for 29th through 34th or 33rd in the points, separated by just 12 points. Those guys will be racing each other like crap. So be on the lookout for that. Cup Series at Talladega. Yes, Cup Series at Talladega, the Geico 500. If you guys kind of saw my tweets throughout the race, I was not very positive about the race. Not very a big fan of the package that they have. I don't think the next gen works very good on these plate tracks. It's hard for them to go 3 wide. They did go 3 wide. It works. Sometimes it doesn't work. I didn't think the race was overly that good. I don't know what your guys' opinion is. But we're not really here to talk about the race itself. We're just here to talk about the back markers, which is, again, the fun part. The race was kind of stagnant. We had our first lap crash, literally on the first lap. The 34 of Michael McDowell kind of sucked for him. He was one of my underdog picks. He crashed on the first lap or the second lap, one of the 2 laps. And it was a tire went down. They had to replace a toe link. And they tried to get back on the lead lap. It's just either someone else went a lap down or they couldn't stay in the lead draft. And by the time they had just gotten 3 laps down, I think they just gave up. Because literally the 34, the final half the race, it felt like, were literally just logging laps. Because they weren't even trying to stay in the lead draft, even though his teammates were actually trying to keep him in the lead draft. We did have the 36 entered for this race. Obviously, Zane Smith, this is one of his 6 starts in the 38, so they brought out the 36 for Todd Gilliland. And for Zane Smith, it would be a very short day. A short day. I mean, he ran most of the race, but then he was involved in kind of the first real crash of the race, which also was involved. The other open car was the 62 of Austin Hill. Been a very quiet year for Beard Motorsports, and it makes me wonder how much longer they're going to be out, be in the sport. They only run the 4 races of the year. This next-gen car is not getting any less expensive. And I wish we could see the Beard car more than just 6 races. I know they're running a couple more races this year, but I wish Beard Motorsports could expand because it's got to be hard to only run 6 races a year, even with an RCR Technical Alliance and Brendan Gaughan funding. So we had that crash, which eliminated the 38 on lap 141. So it's kind of been a rough go for Zane Smith so far for FRM. 32nd or 31st at Phoenix and the 37th at Talladega. Couple laps, about 37 laps later, we had the big crash, another big crash of the race, which wiped out quite a few cars. But the back markers were able to avoid it. Both Rick Ware cars and BJ McLeod were at the very back of the field, so they were able to avoid all of this. We're just going to fast forward to the end because, like I said, no back markers were involved in any crashes, frankly. Came to the last lap. Obviously, these guys are racing around like 15-year-olds at a short track. They're running at a plate track like a bunch of knuckleheads. So what do we do? In great Talladega fashion, we crash on the last lap and end the race under caution because we can't finish under green. I don't know why, but both plate races this year have ended under overtime and under caution. Come on, guys. This is supposed to be the Elite Series, and we're ending under overtime under caution. What are we doing here? And ironically enough, it's a 23-11 car that pretty much brought out the caution in both races. Travis Pastrana at Daytona and Bubba Wallace here. Except Bubba's was actually for the win. Travis was running for a top 10. So it's just frustrating, man. Like, one of my all-time favorite races, and I truly mean this. I wasn't even alive for it. I just like going back and watching it. The 2001 Talladega 500. Bobby Hamilton won it. Flag to flag. Amazing race. Green flag pit stops. Everybody stayed in the lead draft. And everybody raced each other clean. Amazing race. One of my all-time favorite races. I strongly suggest you guys check it out if you guys ever have some free time. It was, I believe it was the last caution-free race at Talladega, or was that 2002? One of those years was the last caution-free race at Talladega. And in my opinion, running that long without a yellow is so impressive. But the respect that those guys showed each other in that day in 2001, it's why it's one of my all-time favorite races. 2002, okay. But still, caution-free races at Dega are actually some of the most underrated races at Talladega. So seeing a race like this, again, just end under yellow, it's so stupid. And then they threw the caution immediately. I mean, you talk about this caution could not have come out any quicker. Like, goddamn, the 23 is about halfway spun out. Oh, hit the button. Like, okay, I get it. We have to make sure the drivers are okay, but all the cars are still spinning. All the other cars have to file their way through the field. Throwing the caution as quick as they did is not going to get the safety trucks out there any faster. And unfortunately, what it did is it actually screwed up the finishing order by a lot because they had to go by when the field was frozen or however they do that finish. And it costed some backmarkers some really good finishes, which really pissed me off because, frankly, it shouldn't be at the time of caution. If the 12 of BJ McLeod or the 78 of BJ McLeod and the 51 of Yeley passed all those guys because they were maintaining speed and came back around to finish 8th and 12th, they should have been credited with 8th and 12th. The original finishing order had J.J. Yeley in 8th. I believe it was Todd Gilliland in 9th and B.J. McLeod in 12th with Ty Dillon in 15th and Riley Herbst in 25th. Also mentioning the 42 of Noah Gragson crashed out again, by the way. And by the way, hot take, Noah Gragson did that to himself. I forgot to bring this up. I actually forgot to bring this up. For all the people that say he got Chastained, he did not. Ross Chastain did the same exact thing that Brad Keselowski did to Jeff Gordon back in Texas in 2014, and he did nothing wrong. It's called going for the win. Noah came back down, just like Jeff came back down on Brad. So for all the people who blame Chastain for that crash, yeah, I don't know where your logic is. I think it's just fun to blame Ross. Noah did that to himself. Jeff Gordon did that to himself. So for everyone blaming Ross, don't blame Ross. Noah did that to himself. So you can call it an idiotic move all you want. But at the end of the day, you got to go for it. Just like Brad was going for the championship back in 2014. So we will never see another caution-free race at Dega. Well, we won't see one, period, because of the stages. That's the sad part. The stages already made sure of that. But I know. I just wish we could see a caution-free race at Talladega. The way that can happen is so cool. But yeah, hot take. That was on Gragson, not Chastain. So you guys can disagree with that in the chat, but that's how I feel. But yes, going back to the finishing order, I just feel for Yeley, man. It would have been his first top 10 in 10 years. At least Todd, yes, he got to keep his top 10. The revised order was Todd Gillen was 10th, JJ was 11th, and BJ all the way down to 18th, which again is so stupid. If they came across the line in 8th, 9th, and 12th, then they should be credited right where they are. It is so stupid how NASCAR does that finishing order. but it jumbled up the border a lot. All the back markers finished right near each other in the top 33 charter battle. Noah Gragson was going for that win, and Legacy Motor Club, you could say the reason why they did make that move on them was because that team is low-key kind of desperate right now. And why I say that is, we've been saying on the last couple episodes that the 42 team is kind of a joke. They're 33rd right now in the points. The 42 team of Legacy Motor Club is 33rd in owners points. Nowhere near the top 25 bonus. And they are out technically right now. They are on the bubble of the top 33 charter battle. Cannot believe that we're actually discussing to the point that the 42, to an extent, if the bad luck continues, the 42 car could potentially, now it would take more bad luck, but the 42 has to start running good. If we have another bad race at Dover this weekend, possibly they could fall out of the top 33, which is just unbelievable. For all the crap that Ty Dillon got last year, he was not this bad. Noah Gragson has been just done nothing in the 42 this year. And overall, Legacy Motor Club has not been good. The 43 hasn't done very much better. But man, the 42 team, yeah, I agree in the chat. They have dropped the ball, in my opinion. And I'm sorry if you're a Noah Gragson fan, but they're not doing well. The 15 car is still ahead of them 10 races into the season. And the 15 car for Rick Ware Racing is ahead of the 42. And the 51 for Rick Ware Racing is only 11 points behind them. I mean, come on. What are we doing here at Legacy Motor Club? What are we doing here? You got all this extra funding from Jimmy Johnson. You've got Petty. You got all these other people involved. You changed your name. You changed your likeness. You spent all this money repackaging your organization. But what's happening here? What is happening here? So just surprising to see Legacy Motor Club falling this bad. Not much else changed. I think the way we're seeing it now with the owner points, as much as we love BJ, and we know the 78 team has definitely improved their speed this year, they will still, unfortunately, finish in the bottom three. The 78 is 34 points behind the top 33 right now. So it's safe to say that the 78 is mathematically eliminated. The 77, I would still say, has a legit chance, 27 points behind the top 33 bubble. And even the 51 still has a legitimate chance. But the 78, I would already say 10 races in is a mathematical lock, which means for 2024, the 78 will be on the bubble for their charter repossession. I've predicted that the 77 will sell at the end of the year. I think it's time that Spire gets rid of that car, puts it into the 7, and becomes more competitive. And I also believe that Rick Ware will sell one of his charters as well at the end of the season. The Cup Series field is going to look a lot different when we come into 2024. The other backmarkers, they're doing good. The 38 has dropped out of the top 25, but only by 1 point, so they still got a chance at that bonus. The 34 is still in the top 20, of course. And, of course, we know the 47 is locked in because of their Daytona 500 win, so they're fine either way. But other notable teams that are still struggling right now, both colleague cars still outside the top 25. Stuart Haas 41 outside the top 25. Richard Childress 3 car is 30th. The Wood Brothers car is outside the top 30 again. So, a lot of high-profile organizations really struggling this year. Really, really struggling. So, for all the crap that the backmarkers get, we got some very, very high-profile teams that are struggling just as bad. But they will take on the Monster Mile this weekend at Dover, one of my favorite racetracks to personally race on. And I don't do iRacing, but I do NASCAR Heat. And I love racing on Dover. Just the 36 chartered cars, not many differences. We do have the return of Brennan Poole. Yes, Brennan Poole returns to Rick Ware Racing for the first time since 2020. He'll be driving the 15 car. Millennium Jet Card will be the sponsorship. Great to see Brennan back. We know he can get the most out of equipment, and I'm curious to see the 15 and the 51 have definitely shown more speed this year, and I'm really curious to see what he can do in that car. J.J. Yeley moves over to the 51. We knew Biohaven was going to stay with the team. Obviously, Biohaven is just for Rick Ware. They're not actually affiliated with is for Rick Ware. They weren't affiliated with Cody Ware. They were just his sponsor. Biohaven sponsors almost every Rick Ware car in every division. Their Top Fuel Dragster, their sports car, their Indy car. They sponsor everything. So we knew Biohaven was going to stay for a full year sponsor in the 51. And I would say the smartest plan for Rick Ware going forward, put Yeley in the 51 as the primary driver for the rest of the year. Yeley's a great driver. He races the car hard, but he also keeps it clean. What that would allow Rick Ware is to keep the 15 open, because all the races that Yeley had sold in the 15, they can now transfer that over to the 51. And that opens up all these races for the 15 car. So you can bring in guys like Brennan Poole. You can bring in other Xfinity guys, like maybe we'll see Garrett Smithley again in the 15. But it really opens the door for more races for other drivers for the 15 car this season. But I think if I'm Rick Ware, that's the plan that they should be going with. Keep Yeley in the 51 as the primary driver for the rest of the year, and put random drivers in the 15. I could see Zane Smith. Like I said, Zane Smith, we saw him in the 51. Put him in the 15 for a couple of races. You want to bring back Matt Crafton? Bring him back too. You want to have Ben Rhodes do a couple of races? You can have a rotation of Thor Sport drivers. Just don't put Deegan in there. You can have a rotation of the Thor Sport drivers. Joey Hand for the road courses. If David Reagan wants to come back, we know Jensen Button will be back again, So real opportunity here for Rick Ware. I think we'll definitely see more speed out of the 51. We saw more speed out of the 51 at Martinsville. We saw more speed out of the 51 at Bristol before they blew up. Yeah. I agree. Yeah, the Dinger has not done much. I agree. I think AJ probably misses going to Xfinity, leaving Xfinity, because he was a lot more competitive there than he was in the Cup Series. And I think that's the biggest problem for Kaulig right now. I think, I've said spreading yourselves too thin. There's a reason why Junior Motorsports will not go to Cup. It's because if they go to Cup, their Xfinity program is going to fall. And unfortunately, I feel like that's what's happened to Kaulig. When they left Xfinity, or when they went up to Cup, and their Xfinity team has been very stagnant. Yes, Allmendinger was still fast and was winning races, but overall their team has not been where it has since they went to Cup full time. And if Dale Jr. did that, I would feel like the exact same thing would happen as well. So, Almirola going from 30th to 24th. Okay, fine. We'll give Eric a shout out. Yeah, Kaulig has fallen a lot. Daniel Hemrick has done nothing in that 11 car, and will continue to do nothing but make him fool of himself as one of the biggest fluke champions in NASCAR. Sorry, I said it. Daniel Hemrick had to bump his way to a championship. He couldn't pass the 22 cleanly. So I'm sorry for the Daniel Hemrick fans, but that championship win was a joke. The fact that he only won one race in that JGR car that year, I think is all you need to know. So, definitely going to be a fun weekend. Hopefully we'll be able to race at some point, because the weather is not looking good. Tomorrow looks like a complete washout. Saturday, maybe, and Sunday, maybe, but there's also a possibility we might be getting a triple header on Monday. Oh boy. We'll see. We'll be racing at some point. But we don't know when. Anyway, guys, hopefully I'll join you guys on Friday for some racing action covering on Twitter. If not, we will see you guys at some point. We'll be back on next Tuesday with the ARCA Racing podcast. Can't wait to discuss some Kansas plans. That'll be a lot of fun. But until then, you guys enjoy the rest of your Thursday night and your weekend in general, and take care. I'm Colby Evans, starting Park Car, signing off for Thursday, and we'll catch you all later. Again, have a great weekend, everyone, and stay dry, because it's going to be a wet one. Bye, guys.